Hi. For the first part of this presentation, we're going to be going over the different types of slopes. And as you can see on the first part of your worksheet here, there are 4 different types of slope. There's positive slope, negative slope, zero slope, and undefined slope. As I go through this presentation, you need to make sure that you are following along by not just listening, but also writing down everything that I write down on this worksheet. Please make sure that you are following along with me, and please make sure that you are listening because I have a lot of important information that I would like to share with you. The first graph that I'm going to be starting with on this worksheet is positive slope. Once again, positives tells us that the line is going up. Remember, we look at a line and we try to look at the constant rate of change. The slope tells us how the line is changing throughout the graph. So if I was going to make a line for positive slope, once again, I know that I read the graph left to right, and I would simply just make a line that is going up. The next graph that I want to look at is negative. And I know already that with a negative slope, the line is going down. So once again, just like we did for positive, I know that my rate of change is going down, so I'm just simply going to draw a line going down. Now the next two are a little bit tricky. Zero slope and undefined slope. These two types of slopes are once again opposites of each other, just like positive slope and negative slope are. Zero slope simply tells you that y, or the change in y, is 0, and that x is staying the same. So if I was going to draw this line is going to be a horizontal line parallel to the x-axis. So once again, 0, and I'll draw my little line here, slope. When it comes to undefined slope, the biggest thing that you need to realize here is that it's undefined because y is constant, but x is 0. And if I was going to draw this slope, I would have a vertical line now parallel to my y-axis. Okay, once again, undefined now is that line going up and down compared to 0 where we said it was going left and right. So where we are on this worksheet is now the back, and there's a lot of information that's going to be presented on the back of this worksheet. Once again, you're going to work with me to define what is slope, and we're also going to be able to figure out how we find slope from a table, from a graph, from an equation, and from 2 points. Once again, please make sure that you are working with me and following along as I go through each one. I'm going to break down each part of this table. Make sure that you are writing your notes in a way that you can understand and a way that they are organized so that when I ask you to reference them, you know what I mean. The first thing we're going to do is once again define what is slope. And we already know that slope describes a line, or the line, or the steepness of a line. So what I want you to write on here and on this line is the steepness. The steepness of a line. And there's 2 things that we need to know and be able to say once we are finding the steepness or the slope of a line. And I've already used a couple of them. Once again, we talk about the change in y being on the top over the change in x. All right? And you don't need to write this down, but a quick way of writing this, now you don't need to write this down, but a quick way of writing the change in y over the change in x would be delta y over delta x, where these little triangles just mean the change. Now another thing that I'm going to refer to as far as slope, and you've heard me say this yesterday or in the previous days, is we're going to refer to slope as rise over run. And remember, rise can be up or down, where run can be right or left. So like I said before, we're going to go through each section of this table. I'm going to have you guys fill in and define some of these blanks, and we might work through some of these, but overall, I'm going to let us have a conversation in class to figure out how to find a slope from a table, a graph, an equation, or from 2 points. For right now, this is just a quick preview of what we're going to be getting into over the next couple weeks, so please work with me while I go through each. As we see here, we're going to be able to find slope from a table, and we have 2 parts that we need to fill in here. It says find the blank blank of the x and y values, and number 2 is write the slope as blank. Well, we kind of already talked about this a little bit, but we already know that we need to find the constant rate. We need to be able to find the constant rate of the x and y values. And the way we write this is we write the slope as y over x, where this is, once again, a fraction. What I want you to do to set some of this up, and like I said, we're going to be going over this in class, is when we are given a table, we are given a list of x values and y values. And we can do that for both tables here. What I want to highlight here in the first table is that when we are given x0 and y any number, so let's say in this case it's positive 3. I know right here when x is 0 and a y is a number, this is my y-intercept. As we start looking at finding slope from a graph, the first thing I want you to do is plot the points on the graph and draw the line as you see it below. Our 2 points here are at 2, 2 and 5, 6. I know that I can find the slope from these 2 points. Once again, let's fill in our blanks here and go over how do we find the slope now from a graph. The first thing I need to do is I need to be able to choose 2 points. And I need to be able to choose 2 points on the line as reference points, or like I said the other day, that are pretty points. What I need to be able to do after that is I need to be able to once again look at the rise over the run. And if I was going to be doing that on the graph here, I know that this is a positive slope. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to go to the right 1, 2, 3. We write our slope, if we remember, as rise over run, or as y over x. So if I wanted to write the slope for this equation, I would say that it's 4 over 3. As we see in this section, we can find slope from an equation, and we already talked about this. The biggest thing that we need to understand, and once again know, is that slope-intercept form is that y equals mx plus b. In order to find slope, I need to solve the equation for y. Okay? And we need to also understand in number 2 that slope is the rate of change. That slope is the rate of change. Therefore, It is next to the variable x. So right here, we know that this is slope. If you remember from equation solving, we can say that the slope is the coefficient of x. As we look at our equation y equals mx plus b, we already know that m is the slope. Once again, let's identify the b as our y-intercept. If I wrote down the equation y equals 3x plus 4, I would be able to identify both the slope and the y-intercept. I would know here that my slope equals positive 3 and my y-intercept equals 4 because I know the different parts of my equation. The last part of this worksheet that I want to go over with you today is how to find slope from 2 points. And this is the hardest part here, and we're going to go over how to fill in these lines and look at 1, 2, and 3. And in class, we're going to talk about how we do this together. So I just want to preview this, and I just want to talk about it a little bit, but I'm not going to get too in depth. So if we look at number 1, we label the blank and blank coordinates. Well, we already know that when it comes to slope and when it comes to things on a graph, we have both x and y coordinates. So what we need to be able to do is label both the x and the y coordinates. Once we have done this, we can find the change of y and the change of x by simply subtracting. What I mean by this is we are going to get to a point where we are learning and knowing the slope formula. And what I would like you to do is write that down in your notes here. Slope equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And right now you might be thinking, what does that mean? Well, if we remember from our other parts of this worksheet, we know that y goes on the top, x goes on the bottom, and all we're doing is trying to find the change in y and the change in x. And we're doing this now when given 2 points by simply just subtracting. Once we do this, we can write the slope as, once again, the change of y over the change of x.